7 subtle shifts that stole my joy after 70 and how I reclaimed it. What if one woman's journey back to herself could illuminate your path to a brighter future? This video shares 7 subtle shifts that, over time, diminished the joy of a vibrant 76-year-old woman named Eleanor. These weren't dramatic life events, but quiet changes in habit and perspective that slowly chipped away at her sense of purpose and fulfillment. Whether you're 70, 50, or even 30, understanding these shifts can help you cultivate a life rich with meaning and connection, regardless of your age or circumstances. Eleanor's story isn't about blame or regret, but about recognizing the often unseen ways we unintentionally limit our own happiness. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand what to avoid, but also discover practical steps to build a life that feels more vibrant, engaging, and authentically yours. And if you recognize yourself in some of these shifts, don't worry, it's never too late to reclaim your joy. Stick with me and let's explore Eleanor's story together. Shift 1. Trading curiosity for comfort. Eleanor, a woman who once radiated an infectious thirst for knowledge, found herself slowly retreating into the familiar. In her younger years, she was a voracious learner, constantly enrolling in classes from pottery to philosophy, her mind buzzing with the excitement of acquiring new skills and perspectives. Her evenings were often filled with lively discussions, debating current events or dissecting the latest novel with friends, her voice ringing with passionate opinions and insightful observations. Weekends were reserved for exploring new corners of her city, visiting museums, attending concerts, or simply wandering through unfamiliar neighborhoods, her eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. She was a collector of experiences, always eager to add another vibrant thread to the rich tapestry of her life. But as time marched on, a subtle shift began to occur. The lure of her comfortable armchair, a warm blanket, and a familiar television show started to outweigh the excitement of venturing into the unknown. The prospect of navigating crowded streets or deciphering complicated bus routes felt increasingly daunting, while the ease of staying home became increasingly appealing. The energy she once poured into learning new things began to wane, replaced by a growing preference for the predictable comfort of established routines. Instead of engaging in stimulating conversations, she found herself content with the quiet hum of the television. The vibrant tapestry of her life, once so full of color and texture, began to fade, the threads of curiosity replaced by the muted tones of complacency. This wasn't a conscious decision, a deliberate rejection of the world outside her door. It was a gradual, almost imperceptible process, a slow erosion of her adventurous spirit. The world, once a vast and exciting playground, began to shrink, not in its physical dimensions, but in the scope of her experiences. The questions that once burned in her mind, the desire to understand and explore, began to dim, replaced by a quiet acceptance of the status quo. She stopped asking why and how, content to simply observe from the sidelines. The cost of this shift was a subtle but profound loss. The intellectual stimulation that had once fueled her vibrant inner world began to diminish, replaced by a growing sense of stagnation. The joy of discovery, once a constant companion, became a distant memory, a reminder of a time when her world felt limitless and full of possibility. The vibrant hues of her life began to bleed away, replaced by the soft grays of comfort and routine. Shift 2. Letting fear drive the wheel. After a fall, Eleanor became increasingly fearful of leaving her house. This is a common experience for many older adults. The world can feel like a dangerous place when our bodies begin to betray us, making us feel vulnerable and uncertain. A simple stumble or slip can shake our confidence and make us question our abilities. For Eleanor, this initial fear, while understandable, began to extend beyond the realm of physical safety and seeped into other areas of her life, creating a ripple effect that touched almost every aspect of her daily existence. The fear of falling morphed into a fear of the unknown, a fear of anything that deviated from the predictable routine she had established within the confines of her home. She became afraid of trying new recipes, worried that an unfamiliar ingredient or technique might lead to a mishap in the kitchen. The joy of culinary experimentation, once a source of pleasure and creativity, was replaced by a cautious adherence to familiar dishes and flavors. She became afraid of joining new groups, intimidated by the prospect of meeting new people and navigating unfamiliar social dynamics. The laughter and camaraderie of shared experiences, once a vital part of her life, became something she observed from a distance, her fear creating an invisible barrier between her and the connection she craved. She even became afraid of expressing her opinions, her voice silenced by the fear of judgment or disagreement. The lively debates and passionate discussions that had once fueled her intellectual curiosity were replaced by a quiet acquiescence, her thoughts and perspectives kept hidden within the confines of her own mind. Fear, once a valuable protector, a vital mechanism designed to keep us safe from harm, became a prison, its invisible bars confining her to a shrinking world of self-imposed limitations. Her interactions became fewer, her experiences more restricted, her world less vibrant. The spontaneous joy of saying yes to new opportunities was replaced by the cautious hesitation of what if. The cost of this shift was a profound, diminished sense of agency, a feeling that she was no longer in control of her own life. The reins had been handed over to fear, and the journey, once filled with the excitement of unexpected detours and scenic routes, became a predictable and monotonous drive along a well-worn path. The thrill of spontaneous living, the delight of embracing the unknown, became a distant memory, replaced by the quiet resignation of a life lived in the shadow of fear. Shift 3. Mistaking silence for strength. Eleanor always prided herself on her independence. She hailed from a generation where self-sufficiency was not just valued, it was essential. She'd navigated life's challenges with a stoic resolve, rarely asking for assistance, even when facing significant hurdles. She'd raised her children single-handedly after her husband's untimely passing, managing a demanding career while simultaneously nurturing a loving home. She'd faced financial hardships, health scares, and personal setbacks, always meeting them head-on with a quiet strength that inspired admiration from those around her. Asking for help, in her mind, was an admission of weakness, a sign that she wasn't capable of handling things on her own. She saw vulnerability as a chink in her armor, a vulnerability she couldn't afford to expose. Silence, she believed, was a shield, protecting her from judgment and pity. But over time, this fierce independence, once a source of pride and resilience, began to morph into a heavy burden. The weight of her unspoken struggles, the silent battles fought within the confines of her own heart and mind, began to take their toll. She internalized her anxieties and fears, carrying them like heavy stones in the pit of her stomach. She bottled up her emotions, convinced that showing any sign of weakness would diminish her in the eyes of others. The very strength she so admired in herself became a wall, isolating her from the very people who cared about her and wanted to offer support. The silence she mistook for strength became a suffocating blanket, smothering her spirit and dimming her joy. She missed out on the comfort of shared experiences, the solace of knowing she wasn't alone in her struggles. She denied herself the opportunity to receive the love and support that was readily available, choosing instead to bear the weight of her burdens in solitary silence. The cost of this shift was a profound sense of loneliness, a gnawing feeling of isolation that crept into the corners of her life, casting long shadows over even the brightest moments. She missed the warmth of human connection, the simple joy of sharing her heart with others, the relief of knowing that it was okay to not be okay, that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness but a testament to her humanity. It was a missed opportunity for connection and support, a chance to build bridges of understanding and empathy, to weave a stronger, more resilient tapestry of life with the threads of shared experience and mutual care. Shift 4. Holding on to outdated narratives. Eleanor had a story she told herself, a narrative woven from the fabric of her past experiences, a narrative that whispered limitations and whispered doubts. This story, while familiar and comforting in its own way, began to constrict her vision of the future, casting long shadows over the possibilities that lay ahead. She found herself clinging to the belief that she was too old to learn new skills. Her mind closed off to the exciting prospect of acquiring fresh knowledge and expanding her horizons. The world of technology, with its ever-evolving gadgets and applications, seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, a foreign language she was too weary to learn. The thought of enrolling in a computer class, of grappling with unfamiliar software and navigating the complexities of the digital age, filled her with a sense of trepidation and inadequacy. She convinced herself that her ways were too deeply ingrained, her habits too firmly established, to embrace new approaches or venture down unfamiliar paths. The comfortable routines of her daily life, while predictable and safe, became a gilded cage, confining her to a shrinking world of self-imposed limitations. The vibrant tapestry of her younger years, a tapestry woven with threads of adventure, curiosity, and a thirst for new experiences, began to fade, replaced by the muted tones of complacency and resignation. She had always loved gardening, her hands finding solace in the rich earth, her spirit nourished by the vibrant colors and fragrant blooms that emerged under her care. But lately, even the simple act of tending to her beloved garden felt like a chore, the physical demands outweighing the joy it once brought. She longed to learn new gardening techniques, to experiment with different plant varieties, to create a vibrant oasis of color and fragrance in her backyard. But the story she told herself, the story of limitations and weariness, held her back, whispering doubts and discouraging her from pursuing her passion. She told herself she was too tired to pursue new passions, her energy reserves depleted by the demands of daily life. The spark of creativity that had once burned so brightly within her began to flicker and dim, replaced by a growing sense of apathy and resignation. She had always dreamed of learning to paint, of capturing the beauty of the world around her on canvas, of expressing her inner world through vibrant colors and evocative brushstrokes. But the story she told herself, the story of exhaustion and limitations, extinguished that flame of artistic aspiration, leaving her with a quiet sense of regret and a nagging feeling of unfulfilled potential. The cost of holding on to these outdated narratives was a profound, diminished sense of possibility, a gradual erosion of the joy that comes from personal growth and the exploration of new horizons. It was a missed opportunity to embrace the richness of her later years, to discover hidden talents, to rekindle old passions, and to create a life filled with purpose and meaning. The story she told herself became a self-fulfilling prophecy, limiting her vision and preventing her from experiencing the fullness of life that was still within her reach. Shift 5. Shift 5. Neglecting the power of small joys. Shift 5. Neglecting the power of small joys. Eleanor, a woman who once reveled in the simple pleasures of life, found herself increasingly overlooking the small joys that had previously punctuated her days with moments of happiness. A warm cup of tea in the morning sun, the vibrant colors of a sunset, the comforting weight of her cat curled up on her lap. These small, seemingly insignificant moments had once filled her with a quiet sense of contentment, a gentle reminder of the beauty and goodness in the world. But as the challenges of aging began to weigh on her, as her physical limitations became more pronounced and her world seemed to shrink around her, she began to lose sight of these small but vital sources of joy. Her focus shifted to the difficulties she faced, the aches and pains in her joints, the growing list of things she could no longer do with the same ease and vigor as before. The vibrant hues of her world began to fade, replaced by a monotonous gray. The birdsong that had once greeted her each morning became just another sound, a background noise to the worries and anxieties that filled her mind. The fragrant blooms in her garden, once a source of delight and inspiration, became just another chore, a reminder of the physical exertion required to maintain their beauty. The phone calls with her friends, once filled with laughter and shared stories, became shorter, less frequent, the conversations tinged with a subtle undercurrent of shared anxieties about the aging process. She stopped noticing the warmth of the sun on her skin, the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves, the comforting aroma of freshly baked bread. She stopped savoring the taste of her favorite foods, the rich flavors and textures that had once brought such pleasure to her palate. Meals became a perfunctory act, a necessary task to fuel her body, devoid of the joy and appreciation she had once felt. The books she had once devoured, escaping into worlds of adventure and imagination, now sat untouched on her shelves, gathering dust. The thought of immersing herself in a story, of losing herself in the lives of fictional characters, seemed like too much of an effort, a luxury she could no longer afford. This gradual erosion of small joys had a profound impact on Eleanor's overall sense of well-being. The cumulative effect of overlooking these seemingly insignificant moments of happiness was a slow but steady decline in her overall mood and outlook on life. The world, once a source of wonder and delight, began to feel dull and uninspiring. The vibrant tapestry of her life, once so rich with color and texture, began to unravel, the threads of joy replaced by the muted tones of apathy and resignation. The cost of neglecting these small joys was a gradual erosion of happiness, a diminished appreciation for the present moment, and a growing sense of disconnect from the beauty and goodness that still surrounded her, waiting to be noticed and savored. She had inadvertently closed herself off from a vital source of nourishment for her soul, the simple pleasures that had the power to lift her spirits and remind her of the inherent joy in being alive, even in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Shift 6. Comparing herself to others. Eleanor, a woman who once possessed a strong sense of self and celebrated her own unique journey, began to fall prey to the insidious trap of comparison. The curated perfection projected on social media, the airbrushed images of eternally youthful faces and seemingly effortless successes, began to seep into her consciousness, casting long shadows over her own life. She found herself scrolling through endless feeds of smiling faces on exotic vacations, meticulously decorated homes, and seemingly perfect families, each image a subtle indictment of her own perceived shortcomings. The vibrant tapestry of her own life, once a source of pride and contentment, began to pale in comparison to the glossy, manufactured realities presented online. The seeds of envy began to sprout, taking root in the fertile ground of her insecurities. She compared her modest apartment to the sprawling mansions featured in home decor magazines, her quiet evenings at home to the glamorous social gatherings depicted on television, her own aging face to the wrinkle-free visages of celebrities promoting the latest anti-aging creams. She began to focus on what she lacked: the material possessions, the social status, the youthful appearance, rather than appreciating the abundance that already existed in her life. The love of her family, the loyalty of her friends, the rich tapestry of her memories. These precious treasures began to fade into the background, overshadowed by the glaring spotlight of comparison. The joy she once derived from simple pleasures, the quiet contentment she had found in her own company, began to erode, replaced by a nagging sense of dissatisfaction and a yearning for something more. The vibrant colors of her world became muted, the ordinary moments of beauty and connection losing their luster in the harsh glare of comparison. The laughter of children playing in the park, the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the warmth of the sun on her face. These small joys, once so readily appreciated, became lost in the fog of her discontent. This constant comparison stole her joy, replacing it with a pervasive sense of inadequacy and a gnawing feeling that she wasn't measuring up. She began to question her own choices, her own accomplishments, her own worth. The confident, self-assured woman she once was began to fade, replaced by a hesitant, insecure version of herself, constantly seeking external validation and measuring her own life against the unrealistic standards set by others. The cost of this shift was a profound, diminished sense of self-worth, a loss of appreciation for her own unique journey, and a growing inability to recognize the beauty and abundance that already existed within her and around her. She had inadvertently traded the authentic joy of her own life for the fleeting illusion of perfection projected by others, a trade that left her feeling empty, unfulfilled, and disconnected from the true source of her own happiness. She had forgotten that true joy comes not from comparing ourselves to others, but from embracing our own unique journey, celebrating our own strengths, and appreciating the abundance that already exists within our lives. Shift 7. Forgetting the power of gratitude. Eleanor, a woman who once embraced each day with a heart full of gratitude, found herself gradually losing sight of the blessings that surrounded her. In her younger years, she had cultivated a habit of acknowledging the good in her life, taking time each morning to reflect on the things she was thankful for: the warmth of the sun on her face, the laughter of her grandchildren, the simple pleasure of a good book. These small moments of gratitude had woven a tapestry of contentment and joy throughout her life, creating a foundation of resilience that helped her navigate the inevitable challenges that came her way. She had understood the power of gratitude, its ability to transform ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences, to shift her focus from what was lacking to what was abundant in her life. She had known that gratitude wasn't just a fleeting feeling, but a conscious practice, a deliberate choice to appreciate the beauty and goodness that surrounded her, even in the midst of difficult times. But as time marched on and the challenges of aging began to weigh on her, this practice of gratitude began to fade, replaced by a growing preoccupation with the losses and limitations she faced. The aches and pains in her body, the shrinking circle of friends, the growing list of things she could no longer do, these became the focal points of her attention, casting long shadows over the remaining blessings in her life. The vibrant colors of her world began to dim, replaced by a muted palette of gray, as she focused on what was fading rather than what remained. The birdsong that had once filled her with joy became just another sound, a backdrop to the worries and anxieties that occupied her mind. The laughter of her grandchildren, once a source of pure delight, became tinged with a bittersweet awareness of the passage of time, a reminder of her own mortality. She stopped noticing the small miracles that unfolded around her each day, the vibrant colors of a sunset, the gentle touch of a loved one's hand, the comforting aroma of a home-cooked meal. These small joys, once so readily appreciated, became lost in the fog of her discontent, overshadowed by her growing preoccupation with what was missing from her life. The warmth of the sun on her skin, the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves, the comforting sound of rain on the roof. These simple pleasures, once a source of quiet contentment, became mere sensations, unregistered and unappreciated. She had inadvertently closed herself off from a vital source of nourishment for her soul, forgetting the profound power of gratitude to lift her spirits and reconnect her to the beauty and goodness that still surrounded her. The cost of this shift was a pervasive sense of negativity, a gradual erosion of her joy, and a growing inability to see the good in her life. The world, once a source of wonder and delight, began to feel dull and uninspiring. The vibrant tapestry of her life, once so rich with color and texture, began to unravel, the threads of gratitude replaced by the muted tones of apathy and resignation. She had forgotten that even in the face of loss and limitation, there was still so much to be thankful for, so much beauty and goodness to be found in the present moment. By forgetting the power of gratitude, she had inadvertently diminished her own happiness and disconnected herself from the very source of her strength and resilience. She had lost sight of the simple truth that gratitude is not just a feeling, but a practice, a choice we can make each day to shift our focus from what we lack to what we have, to cultivate a sense of appreciation for the blessings that remain, and to reclaim the joy that is our birthright. If you're still with me, leave a comment below and share one small joy you're grateful for today. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on the latest tips on life after 60 for free. Liking this video also really helps support the channel and allows us to create more content like this. Subscribe now and join our community as we explore inspiring ways to reclaim your joy. Remember, it's never too late. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.